Oh my god, I have a book buying problem. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. I have been buying books. My last book haul I think was about 3 months ago, and honestly I'm ashamed by how many books I have bought since then that I have to show you. Genuinely, it's an absolutely enormous pile next to me. I don't know how long this is going to take me to show you, to go through, but we're going to have to move quite quickly because there are so many books here. These are a mix of things I've bought myself, things that people have gifted to me and like publisher mail, that kind of thing, and a few things that I've got from different book launches and events that I've been to. So let's just pretty much jump right in, because there's no point in me trying to sit here and justify myself and justify how many books I bought, because I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to stop. Although I am now on a more of a book buying ban. I was doing pretty well on a book buying ban, and a lot of these are actually gifted, but then the other day I went shopping with Tasmin. And one of the beautiful things about being very good friends with someone who is a bookseller means that, first of all, you get amazing recommendations, which is encouraging book buying. And also, you often do get a discount. So Tasmin was a terrible influence, and I have come away with a big pile of books. After that, I'm now going to be back on a book buying ban. I'm going to try and slow down this trajectory of book buying that we've recently done. So why don't we start off with I think it was 6 books that I bought. There's 6 sitting here. I think I got 6 books the other day with Tasmin. So I'm going to start off with that pile of books and I will show you the ones that I got. Starting with this book that I'm very excited about. I have talked about it a little bit on my channel before. And it is Pink Slime by Fernanda Trias. This book is one that I'm going to be reading for my Reading Around the World challenge. And this is from a Uruguayan author. And I am so excited about this one. Also, this cover is maybe my favourite cover that I've seen this year. I absolutely love it. Like, something about this is so appealing to me. And also this book itself sounds exactly up my street. It's a dystopian story all about this city that is stuck in a ecological crisis, and all of the rich people have left to go inland to try and escape this deadly red wind and all the toxic algae that is in the waters. You are following an unnamed narrator. She's trying to basically survive, and also her relationship with a young boy that she's been tasked with looking after. I'm really excited about this one. I've also recently seen some really good reviews of this one, so I can't wait to read it. I'm going to be reading it very soon. Next up, another one for my Reading Around the World challenge. I found a half-price copy of Independent People. This one I'm really excited about. In my last video where I talked about what I'm going to be reading for different countries, I said I was going to be reading this one, and then a few people in the comments said that it was really good, or it was one of their favourite books. So I did get it half price because the cover is a little bit destroyed. I don't mind that. I don't mind books that are a bit bashed up and destroyed. And I got this one half price and then with Tasmin's discount as well, meaning it was actually very cheap. So this is a book from Iceland. I'm actually going to take this sticker off while I tell you about it. But I think it is following a father and a daughter. Oh, I've taken that off badly. And he is a sheep farmer and basically is desperate just to have some freedom and independence. But he also has his daughter living with him. And I think it's about how they can live together but still be somewhat kind of independent people. So really excited about this one. I heard amazing things. I'm very happy to get it so cheap. I think I ended up paying like £2.50 for this one, which is amazing. Next up, I found another half price book. This is not for my Reading Around the World challenge, but I've heard amazing things about it, and this is Creatures of Passage. I also got this half price with a discount. I actually don't really know much about what this one is. I remember it was longlisted a few years ago for the Women's Prize, but I don't think it won. But I have heard a lot about it since and heard that people really like it. So this book is all about a woman who's working kind of as a taxi driver, but not really, in Washington DC, and she is in the depths of grief after her twin brother has died. But then when her nephew shows up out of nowhere, she has to confront a lot of things that she's been avoiding, and I think it's very like maybe a gothic. It's got like some mentions of ghosts, and I think it's gonna have like a magical realism feel, but I don't really know much about it, but I am very excited about it. So that is Creatures of Passage. Next up, I got a book that I have already read, and I got Minor Details. I read this a while ago for the Palestinian readathon that was going on on TikTok, but I never actually ended up buying a physical copy because I read it on my Kindle and I really wanted to own one. This book is so powerful and very, very sad. It basically has 2 different storylines. The first half half of the book is following a group of soldiers in 1949, and it follows the story of these soldiers as they capture a young Palestinian woman. And then the second half of the book is in more modern day, and you're following a woman who is a researcher, and she learns a specific minor detail about this event, and it basically lodges inside her head, and then she goes on a journey throughout Palestine to try and find out a lot more about what happened. This book is really brutal and very unflinching, but for me this book also was so transportive to the point that it made me feel anxious while I was reading it because it's so well written. I would highly recommend if you're looking for Palestinian books. That is Minor Detail. Next up we have a couple of books that I've also read, and that is because they were for the Reading Around the World book club. So there's always a link in the description if you want to join the Reading Around the World book club. We do a different country and a different book every single month, and the last couple that we have done, I didn't own the physical copies of the books yet because I was trying not to buy books, but for July we did Turkey and we did Elif Shafak's The 40 Rules of Love. This one, I actually quite like this copy in the end. I couldn't find any copies that I really liked, but I do actually enjoy this now that I've seen it in person. So I read this in June with the book club, and there was kind of a mixed opinions about it. I don't think that many people absolutely loved it, but also no one really hated it either. Most people were going right between 3 and 4 stars for this one. Basically in this book you are following Ella, and she is living a life that lacks all love. She's living kind of in a loveless marriage, and she's raised her children and put her whole life into being a stay-at-home mother. But then when she gets a part-time job reading manuscripts for a literary agent, she kind of discovers this manuscript that is all about the 13th century poet Rumi and also his friend Shams of Tabriz. And so the book follows 2 storylines. It follows the manuscript, the novel, and it also follows Ella's life as she kind of opens herself up to love as well. For me it was about a 3-star read. I wouldn't strongly recommend it to anyone. It has a lot of beautiful lines and beautiful quotes, but nothing about it really was hitting home for me, and a lot of the 2 different stories being intertwined didn't quite work for me. I much preferred the 13th century timeline, but then I felt like we didn't actually get enough time, especially in the 3rd act of that manuscript that we were reading. I didn't feel like we got nearly enough to really feel a sense of closure at the end of the story. And also with Ella's story I was quite bored a lot of the time, but there were some beautiful lines, and I do like the idea behind the book about love and living a life just for love. So that is The 40 Rules of Love. And then I actually picked up the book that we are reading this month for the Reading Around the World book club. So the country that we're doing is Venezuela, and the book that we chose is It Would Be Night in Caracas. And I've actually finished this book now, so I have read it, and it looks a bit thicker than it is. It really didn't take me long at all. The audiobook is pretty short. I actually listened to this as an audiobook. And I think also we had quite similar views in the Reading Around the World book club. You can join the club and read our reviews if you want to know what people thought of this, but I ended up on about a 3-star for me. Basically this is detailing the story of a woman who's living in Venezuela in, I think, 2014, and the city is in crisis, the country is in crisis, and her mother has just died at the very beginning of this book, so she is all alone and trying to survive. At times it's very brutal, and I had to kind of put the book down and step away for a bit because of how certain things are being described. Even though that was getting an emotional response from me, I didn't actually feel that much from our main character. I didn't feel kind of an emotional resonance with her, and so I didn't end up caring probably as much as I should have about her journey. But join the book club if you want more of my thoughts on this one as well. Oops, it was 7 books that I bought the other day with Tasmin. So this is the last one that I actually ended up buying, but it's my current read, so that's why it wasn't in the same pile. And it is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I have started this. I'm only about 10% in. I'm really enjoying it so far. I really thought this was going to be more of a fantasy story, but it's actually much more of a historical fiction with a light touch of fantasy so far. So in this book, you're following Louisa, who is a maid in this kind of crumbling and once great house. And she makes it through the day by doing small little bits of magic to kind of ease her days, because she works for a very cruel and exacting woman, Valentina. Then one day she kind of makes a mistake and shows too much of her magic, and Valentina sees an opportunity to kind of get some fame and some good social standing by inviting people to come and see Louisa do small bits of magic. But Louisa has very good reason to hide the reasons why she can do magic, because it comes from her mother. A long line of people have been persecuted for doing their magic. So far I'm enjoying it. It's very fun, but I can't say much more because I'm only 10% in. So let's round off by doing another couple of books that I've bought myself recently, not in that actual shopping trip, but just ones that I've bought before I go on to ones that I've been sent by publishers. So I also recently bought this book by Claire Keegan, So Late in the Day. This I bought in a charity shop pretty recently, and I've been really enjoying Claire Keegan recently. I read Foster by her, and I really enjoyed that, and I've also heard this one is amazing. It's an absolutely minuscule book. How many pages is this actually? There's very big text, and it's 47 pages long, so I could probably just read this now in 10 minutes, but I'm glad that I found it secondhand because I do really like the way it looks and it's a hardcover, but this actually, the full price of this is £9. So I'm glad that I found this secondhand. So this one I think is about a man who is just like thinking about a woman and the life that they could have had together. I don't know anything else about it and don't want to know because it's only 47 pages long. I also recently picked up this book at a book event and it is Flights by Olga. I've forgotten how you say her second name. I've recently read her other book, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, and I absolutely loved it. So I really wanted to read more of her work. I've absolutely loved every single book that I've read from the Fitzcarraldo editions, like these blue books. So I'm hoping this one's going to be another one that is just as good. And honestly, I'm a bit confused by the blurb of this book. You can pause to read if you want, but it says it's about travel in the 21st century and human anatomy. And I think you're following a few different storylines about different body parts or like dead bodies. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I don't really want to know because I really enjoy the way that she writes and it's so confusing in like a very fun way. So I'm just going to dive into that head first without knowing anything. And then the final one that I have bought myself that I want to show you is this Emily Henry book. I actually bought this while I was on holiday. That's why I've got this kind of international edition. I really like it. I think it's very fun. And I have actually read this as well. And this was honestly one of my favorites from Emily Henry. I was really surprised because her most recent releases, the last two, weren't my favorites. So I was thinking, oh no, am I like outgrowing Emily Henry? But I'm not because I love this one so much. This one has a very funny and very convoluted setup about two people who have just been dumped by their respective fiancés or long-term partners and they decide to move in together because they need a place to stay, and it tracks their relationship as they're kind of grieving their previous breakup and also getting closer together. I really appreciated the main couple. I like the journeys that they went on, and I'm just really happy that Emily Henry still does have my heart because I didn't love Happy Place as much and Book Lovers. They were the two that I've read most recently after this, and I just didn't, I don't know, they were fine, there's nothing really wrong with them, but they didn't have the Emily Henry magic that I feel like Beach Read in particular had for me. But this one is very close second, or perhaps my new favourite Emily Henry, I'm not sure. Okay, so now let's jump in and I'm going to show you some of the publisher book mail that I've been lucky enough to receive over the last few weeks. And let's start off with this beautiful series. So I was lucky enough to be sent an ARC for the final book in the Children of Blood and Bone trilogy, and then they also sent me the final copy too. This is the final copy, this is the ARC, and then they also sent me 2 paperbacks of the other 2 books in the series. So this is very exciting, this is really nice. I read these first 2 books a while ago, and I think probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and so I've just started the final book in this series and I'm very excited about it. It's been a long awaited end to this series and I really want to know what happens to these characters. So this series is a young adult series all about a world in which magic has been stripped away, and it's inspired quite heavily by Nigerian folklore, I believe. And you're following a few different characters, primarily a girl who's had her magic stripped away and her trying to get it back. You're following a princess who's run away from the cruelty of her father, the king. And you're also following her brother, who is a very tortured, morally grey character as well. It's really fun and I can't wait to see how this series actually ends. Next up, I was really happy to be sent Will I Ever Have Sex Again by Sophie Hagen, who is a comedian that I really enjoy, with a lovely little note in it as well. So I believe Sophie wrote this book after a big breakup. So it's part memoir but part in conversation with sex therapists and sex workers, comedians and public figures, all trying to gain an understanding, a better understanding of how we think and talk and feel about sex. I think this one will be really funny as well, so I'm really excited to read this one. Next up we have Any Human Power. This was kindly sent to me by September Publishing, and I believe this is kind of a thriller, but like a political thriller, maybe set in the future. It's kind of confusing actually in terms of the blurb, which I enjoy. I like a confusing blurb because it means it's more surprising going in. But I think it's surrounding some kind of big political upheaval that happens to the characters. And I think it's about a revolution of some kind. But yeah, that is Any Human Power. I'm excited to read that one. Next up, I was really kindly sent The Talented Mr. Ripley. And this is the new covers because of the TV show on Netflix with Andrew Scott. I've never read this book, even though I've heard a lot about it. And I know that people really enjoyed this book and also the previous adaptation and this new adaptation as well. But I haven't started watching it on Netflix. I'm not sure if I want to read this first and then watch it, or watch it and then read it. But I really enjoy this new design of the covers as well. It's very cool with Andrew Scott there. So thank you for sending that to me, Vintage. Next up, we have a few books that I received at a Canongate event recently, and these are all coming out or have come out this summer. So firstly, we have ADHD or ADH&D, which is drugs, heartbreak, avoidance, and dogs. And this is by Jordan Stevens of Rizzle Kicks fame, and I heard him talking about this book at the event and it just sounded so good and like a really personal story as well. Oh, sorry, I said it in the wrong order. Avoidance, drugs, heartbreak, and dogs. So this book is a memoir and it's all about a year after a huge event and kind of like fuck up in Jordan's life. So it's talking about relationships and how to be a modern feminist as a young man and the healing power of dogs. I really enjoyed hearing him talk about it and I'm really excited to get to this one. Next up, we have another one that I'm very excited about and I think I'm going to read very soon. It is Monumenta. So this is about Olga and her house is going to be demolished to put up a monument. She can't figure out what the monument will actually be memorializing because 3 different architects have all come with 3 different proposals about 3 different massacres. And Olga also doesn't want her home to be bulldozed before she has the chance to reconnect with her children for a final dinner. This is a short book and I heard Lara Hayworth speak at the event and it just sounds really excellent, so I'm going to be reading this very soon. Another book that I've sent recently that I'm really excited about is a debut book and it is Sorcery and Small Magics. This one sounds so cute. I think it's a very cozy story but also like a slow burn romance. You're following Leo, who's a master of small magics and very happy to be doing just that. But then one day he gets mixed up and then accidentally does some forbidden magic and then he has to turn to his long-term rival who is very arrogant and grumpy, and together they have to find a counter spell for this magic. I think this will just be really sweet. I'm very excited and I really look forward to being absolutely charmed by this book. This is coming out in October of this year. Next up, we have another book that I have actually just finished. I have just read this one and this came out at the beginning of this month, and that is Rosarita. So this is a skinny little book and it is all about a young woman, and she is from India but she is visiting Mexico as a language student, and she's sitting on a park bench when a very mysterious woman comes up to her and says that she looks just like her mother, who she was really good friends with. And the young woman can't quite believe this because her mother never told her anything about this, but apparently she also came to study in Mexico as an art student when she was younger. So you're following the main character as she is kind of like searching out this small town in Mexico for memories of her mother. It's a beautiful little quiet story and I really enjoyed it. I'd really recommend. This came out just at the beginning of this month. Okay, we are coming slowly to the end. We have a few more books to go through. Next up we have This Is How You Remember It, and it is by the same author as None of This Is Serious, which is looking like that. And this sounds really interesting. It's all about this young girl who has grown up online, from chat rooms about your favorite virtual pet to having her first kiss posted about online. Posting and liking and sharing is all that she has ever known, but she feels completely hollow inside. I think this will be really interesting, especially as someone who posts online now quite a lot. I haven't read their previous book, but I've heard a lot of praise for None of This Is Serious, so I'm excited to see what I think of this one. And this one came out in May. Next up we have a non-fiction, and I went to the book launch for this book, which was extremely fun, and it is for The Spark by Rosalind Moody. This is a book all about how to date spiritually and in touch with your higher, most spiritual self. So it's part memoir but part kind of like self-help to-do list type book, and it's all about how to kind of date in a very truthful way to yourself in a very toxic dating world. I absolutely loved going to the book event for this one because there was a numerology reading, there was mediums, there was a sound bath. It was really amazing and really fun. I'm excited to dive in and see what I can learn from this book too. Okay, we have like 5 books left, so let's just be quick about this. Next up, I got sent Knife by Salman Rushdie, and I've not read anything by Salman Rushdie before, but I'm very intrigued by this. This is the memoir of what happened. He was standing on stage presenting an award and a masked man came up and stabbed him, and he survived this attack, and this is his story about what that event did to him and how he found the strength to kind of stand up and continue writing again after that. Next up, I have been sent Passion Tide, also from Vintage, so thank you very much Vintage, and this is by the same author as The Mermaid of Black Conch, which I've also heard amazing things about. This is about 4 different women and how they have sparked a revolution on a Caribbean island, and this happens after a young woman is found dead. So I'm really excited to read this one. I've heard amazing things about this author's writing, and actually potentially I could do this for my Reading Around the World challenge as well, so I need to just double check which Caribbean island it's actually set on. So that is Passion Tide. So next up we have Mad Woman. This is an art, and this is going to be published at the beginning of September this year, and this is all about a woman who from the outside seems to be living a perfectly ordinary life with her husband and her 2 children until she gets this letter from a women's women's prison, and it threatens to bring up a lot of the violent and traumatic things from her past. And it is about her trying to run away from that and live a different life. So I'm very intrigued about this one, and I also love this ARC cover. So next up we have Bright I Burn, and this is a story set in 13th century Ireland. And it's all about a young woman called Alice who saw what family life did to her mother and decided to live a different way. But as she becomes more powerful, gossip around her gets even worse. And as she's determined to carve a space for herself in a man-dominated world, she is condemned as a witch. I'm a bit hit or miss sometimes with witch stories. Sometimes I love them and sometimes I do not love them, so I'm excited to see which one this is. And this came out at the beginning of June. And the final book that I want to show you is The Edge of Solitude, and it's about a woman who is on a ship that is heading to the Antarctic. And they are on this groundbreaking project to try and save a lot of the region, but as they are getting closer and closer to their destination, she's discovering she doesn't actually know everything about the people that's on board the ship with her, and she also has no way of escaping. So this sounds very intriguing as well, and I also love this proof cover. And this came out on the 4th of July. So I think that is all the books that I want to talk about today. An insane amount of books. I have no idea how many I just showed you. Shall I count up actually? I think that was 28 books that I just showed you, which is insane. Thank you so much for lasting this long if you did watch all the way to the end. If you did watch all the way to the end, I would love if you would leave a comment about any videos that you'd like to see from me in the future. It feels very lazy to ask, but if there is particular things that you like to watch, then please let me know, because I'd be very happy to oblige. But thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to like and subscribe and go and watch all my other videos, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!